now is our pleasure to welcome in ESPN NFL analyst Dan Orlovsky. Dan, what's up, man? How are you?
Craig, I'm doing great, bud. How are you, dude?
I am good. I am ready for this draft to be here, as I'm sure you are as well. But I wanted to obviously talk quarterback with you, but I specifically wanted to kind of dive in to what seems to be a disconnect between a lot of analysts who cover the league and cover the draft specifically, who spend a lot of time on the draft, and those in the league that maybe focus on the NFL more year-round and then get to the draft this time of year. One group, the former, has a lot of love for Drake Maye and has been on Drake Maye for a long time. The latter seems to be all in on Jayden Daniels. I know that you're quite fond of both guys, but really have Daniels ahead at this point in the process. So where do you think that disconnect comes in? Why do you think that's the case? And do you agree that that seems to exist?
My honest answer is I don't think a lot of people know what they're looking at, or what they're, what's needed to play that position at a high level consistently in the NFL, and that physical talent and potential sound really good, and there's some examples of what those guys have become in the NFL, but it's more so about what is going to be that consistent performance on a day-to-day, week-to-week, year-to-year basis. Playing football in the NFL is not playing football in college football at that position, and I've said this for years, Greg, like, most people think about the NFL draft and they think about all the positions the same way. Big, fast, tall, powerful, strong. If I've taken a running back or defensive end or wide receiver in the top five, yeah, the physical is the most important thing. When you're taking a quarterback, the physical is secondary to some of the things and most of the things that are difficult to measure and see with the naked eye unless you know what you're looking at, trying to visualize. And, without kind of knowing some of the position, it's just hard to evaluate it.
Do you think that Patrick Mahomes has broken all of our brains in that people are chasing the next Mahomes instead of looking for the things that maybe more consistently over the history, even the recent history of the league, sans Mahomes actually works at that position? Because obviously Pat was a high upside guy coming out of Texas Tech. And so I just wonder if, like, because he's it right now, maybe that's changing the way people look at the position and it might not be for the better.
Yeah, I've always joked that this is all Patrick's fault. I joked that it was all Tom Brady's fault because everyone was trying to find the next Tom. And it was like, great, go find the kid that's been doubted his absolute whole life, that was talented enough to go to Michigan, but then doubted again his whole life. It was in many ways a maniac, and went to the most maniac organization in the history of the NFL. So I've always joked that this is all Patrick's fault. And great, go find the unbelievably physically talented kid that grew up in professional sports and was again overlooked and went to a team that had one of the greatest offensive minds in the history of the game and a playoff-ready football team. So. There's a little bit of that, and teams are constantly chasing that, and chasing to try to find and every coach in the NFL thinks they can coach up the bad in a player or the flaw in a player, and there's parts of that are true, but we have lost a little bit of the reality of that position, surely.
Dan Orlovsky, ESPN NFL analyst, with us here on the Hoffman Show. What I love about your answer there, Dan, too, is that you mentioned kind of the bio of these guys, like who they are matters, how they're wired matters, and the circumstances they go to matter. So with all of that said, why is Jayden Daniels the right pick for Washington to you?
Yeah, I think he's the best quarterback in this class. If you just take the quarterbacks that we put in that top 6 to 8 group over the last 5 to 7 years, on a year-to-year basis, what are the things that they are doing that are better than everybody else? Number one, they don't panic with the football when other quarterbacks do. Whether they get fooled by coverage, whether they get an unblocked defender, whether they have to subtly move in the pocket. I think Jaden does that the best. Number two, their ball placement is better than everybody else's. Accuracy is throwing it to my guy. Ball placement is throwing it away from the defensive guy. I think Jaden does that the best in this class. The explosive plays in the NFL and what they look like. There's just not a lot of guys in the NFL that get, top 5 or top 7 in explosive plays that are getting it off screen passes. Like the explosive plays that are the 12, the 15 to 25-yard throws, what do they look like? Because you could tell me, this guy's got 100 explosive plays and 75 of them are off screen. Great, that's not real in the NFL. So what guys throw in, off one hitch on a deep crossing route over a dropping linebacker, but before the collapsing safety, or, what guy is seeing that driving safety and replacing with the backside post? Jayden Daniels is that guy on top of, obviously, elite 4.4 athleticism. So I think he's got the fastest eyes in this class. I think he's got the most consistent and repeatable arm and throwing motion in this class. I still think the world is Caleb Williams. He's unbelievably talented. I just think there's the development in Jaden's game that's very real.
One thing that I think is hard to evaluate for all of these guys in a variety of ways, but I think of this the most with Daniels and with J.J. McCarthy. And with Daniels, it's specific parts of his game. With McCarthy, it's the whole thing. Is just because you haven't seen it doesn't mean they can do it, or just because you've only seen it a little bit doesn't mean they can do it. If I had Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr., I wouldn't throw over the middle of the field a ton either. I would throw a bunch of fades and box fades and all the things that Jaden's got endless highlight reel type throws of doing. But how do you evaluate for Jaden specifically, him over the middle of the field, knowing that in an NFL offense, you're probably going to have to work those multi-layer throws with traffic all over the place in a way that he didn't have to do consistently at LSU?
Yeah, let me ask you this, because I've seen that said, and I probably should have asked, where does that come from? The whole Jaden doesn't, is that a numbers thing? Because Craig, I'm in the car right now. I could pull out my notebook.
I think you should probably not do that, Dan. I think you should just drive straight and with both hands on the wheel, but that's just me.
I'm a great driver. I'm a great driver with my knees, man. But I've got so many games where I sit here and I go, oh man, just ripped it over the field to number 3 on the crossing route. Oh, dude, that's a great job with your eyes.
For sure.
Versus Florida, first quarter, 8:58, second quarter. I have so many examples. Go to the Missouri game, go to the Alabama game, where he's just getting to number 2 or number 3 on an in-breaker or a seam route or a crosser. I don't know where that has come from. I don't know.
I think it's a percentages thing, Dan, because I think that because he has been able to throw outside again, because why wouldn't you when you got those dudes out there so much? There are obviously a ton of fades, a ton of comebacks, a ton of hitches on his tape, in a percentage that's higher than a guy like Maye, where he maybe works the middle of the field more. McCarthy's working the middle of the field more. If you watch McCarthy, it looks NFL-y, especially to those of us that have watched a lot of West Coast stuff over the years, for me covering like Sean and all the disciples of him here. But I think you're 100% right. It's there. And that's kind of, I guess, the question, right, is the tendencies are part of the evaluation. Where's it that you look? And I guess for you, what you would say is hey, he can do it. If the defense takes him there, it's fine. It's not that he's choosing to go outside because he can't see over the middle. That's where the stuff is. That makes sense in terms of maybe reframing the question?
Yeah, I would tell you I think it's the opposite of I think he's really good at it. I think he sees it really well. I think he cuts it loose really well. I think he throws it into the right windows. It's a little bit of their style of offense as well at LSU was he had a lot of control. They used a lot of pre-snap motion. And so he got a lot of data and information before the snap, and that's why the ball came out relatively quickly, and he made pretty consistent decisions. So, Craig, I don't have the reservations for Jaden of, oh, man, is he going to be able to throw over the NFL, over the middle of the field at the NFL? I have zero concern with that. If you ask me what do I think is the one thing, I think this is a little bit nitpicky for me, but are there moments where he drops his eyes from a clean pocket because he sees the seam and wants to take off? Yeah, I don't think it's that paramount, but I do see some elements of that, but again, that's not an over concern of mine. No
doubt. I know you got to run, Dan. Thanks so much for your time, man. Hopefully run into you in Detroit later this week, and we can have you back on after the pick and talk about this a little more.
You got it, bud. Be well, travel safely.
Thanks, you too. That is Dan Orlovsky, everybody, with us here on the Hoffman Show. Really interesting there. I want to run back what he said at the end because I don't want to get into it, obviously, because we're running up against a hard stop with Dan there. But this is not just people looking at numbers on a spreadsheet. It's something that Logan has talked about, and some of the other folks that I know that watch a bunch of tape that they maybe see that middle of the field a little bit different, but I think when it comes to studying quarterbacks, Dan is as good as it gets. Certainly that we have access to in the media space, a guy that's been rumbled about for quarterback coaching jobs and such over the past couple of off seasons, and has obviously not gotten them or chosen by his own free will to stay at ESPN. That the ESPN life's probably a lot better than the NFL coaching life, that's for sure. And Dan's got a young family, etc. So I trust Dan on that in a lot of ways, but it's definitely something that I think is worth parsing out. So let's do that, and we can get your calls in 301-230-0980. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, and always live on the free Odyssey app.
This is the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.